What's the problem with being highly processed or ultra processed? Here's how I explain it to people. Number one, let's think about the word whole, W-H-O-L-E, whole, as in whole grain, okay? Or whole food. What does whole mean? When I ask people this, they start to explain to me why the food they're eating is whole. And I just kind of gently stop them and say, no, what does whole mean? And they feel stumped because they're trying to answer it in the context of processed food. And it's really difficult to try to explain to someone why this processed food is actually whole. But what does whole mean? Whole means the whole thing. And I apologize to my third grade English teacher for using the word to define itself, but you understand what I'm saying. If I take my car to the shop and I ask them to fix it and they call me 2 days later and say, hey, your car's fixed, and I get a ride over there and I go up to the shop to pick it up, and my car is sitting on the parking lot on 10 pallets, completely disassembled. I'm gonna go in and say, what the heck is going on, right? I wouldn't stand for that, would you? And the guy says, no, Dr. Martin, that's okay. That's your whole car. It's all there. I promise. We've accounted for every bit of it. Is that my whole car? Technically, it is. But we really need to understand whole, especially related to nutrition, in terms of its function also. Not just whether all the parts are there, but are all the parts working properly? That's another concept of whole that we've lost in nutrition, and I'm trying to get back. So in the same way that you would not accept your disassembled car as fixed, we also should not accept our disassembled food as whole. So in our area, we have a lot of displaced people from Central Africa, and I've gotten to know several of them as patients, and I've asked all of them to tell me their experience procuring or getting grain for their meals. And they've all described going to the market where they usually walked to, and on market day, and they went to the grain cellar, and the grain seller was there with bags of grain. And this was not flour, this was completely unprocessed. They would literally dip the whole kernels of grain and fill the container that the person was using, and they would pay and they would go home. That's whole grain. That's what I mean by whole. Now, they would also go home and they would have to grind it up. They did a lot of work to make it something they could eat. So there was no sense in which they were coming in the middle of the day and opening a bag and taking out 2 slices and slapping some mayonnaise and mustard and meat on and eating it. That was not happening. And in fact, if they made bread out of it, they made some kind of a flatbread just for their meal, but they mostly ate it as a stew or a gruel or something like that. I'm not advocating for doing that. I'm helping you understand the difference between grain grown in a field and brought to market and sold to be processed in the kitchen versus what's happening now. So what happens in America in an industrial society is that grain is taken to the plant and they pulverize it. The machines absolutely, literally put it into the tiniest little pieces that you can't even imagine how small they are. They disassemble all the components. The fiber goes over here, the endosperm goes over here, the husk goes over here. As you do that, nutrients are lost, minerals disappear, vitamins are degraded by the air and the temperature and light and things like that. It is no longer the thing that grew. And a lot of the components that contribute to your health are gone, and you can never get them back. And you can't just add 8 essential vitamins and iron and call it good. It is not the same thing. You can think of this as pre-digesting. So the industrial process pre-digests your carbohydrates for you. That's a little unsettling.
That's nasty.
And it's not good for you. So your body does not work with what you intend it to work with. You can't just say, well, I'm eating whole grains. I intend my body to be getting wholeness. Your body can only work with what you actually give it. So if you give it ultra-processed apples and ultra-processed grain and ultra-processed oils in your meal, it did not get in the healthy things you intended. It got the processed foods you intended. I hope you found this really helpful, and if you did, please subscribe to this page because there's a ton more videos out there.